Hey folks, this is DIY Guy 123 coming at you with another do-it-yourself video. And this video is about how to use a welder to get your CV joint and axle out of the hub. So what we've got here is a 2005 Hyundai Elantra, and the steering knuckle needed to be replaced because of a broken ear that one of the ears that the brake caliper mounts to was snapped off. So we needed to replace the steering knuckle. So all the peripheral parts came free, the tie rod end, the ball joint, even the strut bolts came out okay, no problem there. And the caliper bolts come off, everything was fine there, but, and even the axle nut came off well. Problem was, the axle was seized right in the hub. So what we had is the hub, and then the axle was through the hub. And so in order to free it up, well, we took the castle nut off, put it on backwards so you don't damage the tops of the nut, put it back on the shaft all the way so that the shaft is just flush with the nut, and then you can pound on it without damaging the shaft too much. You probably do damage the nut, but anyway, that's a replacement part. The shaft is what's important. So, oh well, I tried playing around with a hammer like this. Then I tried playing around with a hammer like this. And this is the business end of the hammer. This is a 2-pound hammer. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're wailing it around, puts on a heck of a force. And the axle didn't move at all. So I took my puller. I have a 3-jaw puller that I put on there. And well, it didn't seem to do too much. I mean, it tried. Good effort, but broken puller. Broke the threaded rod on there. And so that wasn't strong enough. So in the end, what we had to do, since we were getting rid of this steering knuckle anyway, and the hub was junk, we've got a replacement hub from a junkyard. In the end, what we did was we cut through the steering knuckle on one side, ground through it, and then once I got it ground through all the way on one side, like that, I could just get I got it ground through on one side, and I took a wedge and drove it in the crack, and I stressed it enough that all I had to do on the other side was score it, and then give it a smack with a hammer, and that's that stuff that broke off. Then I had to cut the outer races off. So, grind those off both sides. Then I took the bearings out of it. And then I had the inner races, and they're around here somewhere. Tripping on them, I suppose. They're somewhere. Cut the inner races out, and now all I was left with was the hub, which is the most, the heavy-duty piece of metal there. It was the most serious piece of metal. And the problem was, it was, that's I took off all that other stuff so that I could get to the hub, because it's the spline shaft that is corroded and rusted solid to the hub. So the next step was to, where is it? Cut off parts of the hub. And here's a little piece of it here. And so I used a cutting wheel on this angle grinder. Oh, here's a piece of the inner race. Anyway, to cut off the top of the hub. And I had to do that because even though I wanted to make a grind this way, a cut this way, the edges of the hub were so protruded so much that my angle grinder could not get close to the center of the hub. So I had to cut the hub off here first so that I could make a cut like this with my angle grinder. So I cut through, but I didn't want to cut through so far that I damaged the shaft, the splines on the shaft. So I cut through, not all the way, but almost all the way. And then I used a wedge. I just left it in here so you can see, in that crack, and pounded it in. And I actually could see the fracture line right down the center. So I knew we were going to make it. As soon as I saw that fracture line, I knew we were going to be okay. However, I was hoping once that fractured and I sprayed a little WD-40 in there, I was hoping that I could pound this axle right out. Still did not want to let go. It held on there terribly hard. So I went to the other side of the hub and made a slice down here, but I didn't want to waste it. It uses up a lot of my cutting wheels to do this. So I did not want to waste another several cutting wheels to cut this off and then go through the same procedure. So what I did, instead of cutting, was I used my welder, which is the start of this video. How does this come into play here? I cranked it up to the maximum, which is 235 amps on AC. And I just used some rods. Actually, they're rods I got from Princess Auto. They're 7018 rods. They're old. I don't know how, maybe 7 years old. Maybe they're full of moisture. I don't know. I've taken them and put them in the oven to boil the moisture out of them. And they still work terrible. And so all they are now for me, I use them for cutting rods. And so I basically turn the welder up as high as it would go and use those rods to liquefy the metal on the opposite side while this wedge was in there. While this wedge was in this side, straining this part open, I went on this side and liquefied the metal to try and provide some stress relief so that it would allow this to open up even further. And that's exactly what happened. I did not weld all the way through because obviously I didn't want to weld the hub onto the spline shaft, but I probably went halfway through. And I just took the rod and went up this direction, and then I used the rod to cut through here, and then heat this up. And once I did that, I was able to, first off, this whole hub was glowing red hot. Not the whole hub, but areas where I welded was red hot, and the whole hub was hot. And with that, I was able to grip the hub like this with the vice jaws, so it was down here, and then I was able to use this fella right here to convince that that shaft to push through. So it did push through, and I think I can get it out here in a sec. And even after going on this axle with the wire wheel and then taking a standard screwdriver and trying to clean the corrosion out of those areas between each of these spline teeth, it still does not want to go back into this old hub. So there's just a tremendous amount of corrosion. It's been there for 10 years, never been apart. I'm certain of that. And so I will anti-seize this. You better believe it. And when we put it into that new hub, the next time somebody wants to take this out, it's going to come apart without any trouble. So the good news is we saved the axle, which was good. We threw away or carved up the hub and the steering knuckle and the bearing, which is okay because we didn't need them anyway. In fact, anyway, so we've saved all the good parts. Oh, another thing, since we were destroying this steering knuckle, we wanted to reuse the ABS sensor. Well, those sensors are in the hub so tight, if you're not really careful, you're going to break it getting it out. And I saw one article, it wasn't a video, but just an article on Google that talked about how the best way to get them out, spray penetrating oil, of course, penetrating fluid, but use some rounded channel lock pliers and grip the top of the sensor and grip the bottom of the sensor and work both ends of the sensor in parallel, and you have twice as chance of getting it out without breaking the sensor. And so that would have been a good idea, but this one was so corroded. What I ended up doing, and since we were getting rid of the knuckle, I ground one side of the ear that holds that ABS sensor on, ground it, and then drove a wedge in there, and the other side fractured, and now we took the sensor out without damaging it. So now you have it. This is how you get a axle freed up from a steering knuckle that is a sacrificial part, steering knuckle in this case, and you can use a welder to do it.